Okay, so we learned the Mishnah. You all also learned the Mishnah. Let's review the Mishnah. The Mishnah started teaching us that there are three places the Kehanim watch in the Bais HaMikdash: Bais Avtinus, Bais HaNitzus, Bais HaMikdash. The Mishnah taught us the difference between these three places. The Bais Avtinus and Bais HaNitzus were two-floor structures. The young Kehanim slept there. The Bais HaMikdash was a larger structure. It had a dome on the roof. And there were rows of stones in which the elderly Kehanim slept there. The elderly Kehanim got the schos, we'll call it, the privilege of sleeping on these rows of stones. The younger Kehanim slept on the ground. They would not sleep in their big day kodesh, rather they would sleep in their mundane clothing. The Mishnah continued part B, which taught us what happened if a Kohen woke up and realized he was Tameh. Ira Kari, he saw Kari. So in Chavav Amid Aleph, the Mishnah continued by teaching us what would he do. He went down through a tunnel. There were torches burning on both sides of the tunnel till he reached the place of the Bais HaTfilah. In the Bais HaTfilah, there were a few interesting elements over there. Number one is there was a madura, there was a big fire to warm yourself. Number two, there was a Bais HaKisei, there was a bathroom of kavod that if the door was closed, you knew someone was there and you not walk into anyone using the bathroom. They were toiveled, they went into the mikvah, they came up, they dried themselves off, and they warmed themselves by the fire. They went back to where they started in the Bais HaMikdash, and they waited until the morning, and then they went home. Why did they go home, even though they went to the mikvah? Because they're not tahar yet. Why are they not tahar yet? Because you need to wait for the sun to set. The Mishnah continued the third part, that anyone that wanted to participate in the Trumas Hadesh and the clearing up the ashes, what would he do? He would wake up early and he would go to the mikvah before the Memaina, before the one appointed on the payasais on the lottery would come. And when he would come, he would knock on the door and say, whoever went to the mikvah, come, and then he would perform the lottery. And we begin the Gemarah on Chavav Amid Aleph, the first piece of Gemarah, after we learn the Mishnah. Says the Gemarah, as we mentioned, the Mishnah began, that there were three places that the Kehanim watched the Bais HaMikdash. As we mentioned in the previous year, why were they watching the Bais HaMikdash? It was not for robbers, it was not for anything else. It was more of a kavod to have watchmen outside the Bais HaMikdash. Says the Gemarah, Minah Hani Mili. Are we all there? Chavav Amid Aleph, which is the first Amid Aleph right after the Mishnah. Chavav Amid Aleph, Minah Hani Mili. Says the Gemarah, from where do we know this? Amar Abaya. Says Abaya, Amar Cross says it in the Pasuk. And they encamped in front of the Mishkan to the east, in front of the Oyel Moed, Mizracham, Moshe, the Aharon, Ubanav. So who are all the people there? There was Moshe, Aaron and his children. And what were they doing? These are the critical words. Shoimrim, they were guarding Mishmeres HaMikdash, the guarding of the Mikdash, of the Mishkan of the Bais HaMikdash, Limishmeres B'nei Yisrael. So what do we see in this pasuk? This pasuk teaches us that Aaron and his children are guarding the Mishkan. So this is the source that how many people were Aaron and his children? Aaron had two sons. So Aaron is one. His two children are two. So that's three. So we see three guardings of the Mishkan of the Bais HaMikdash. That is the source that there were three places that we guard the Mishkan, that we guard the Bais HaMikdash. Asks the Gemarah, Amri. So they said in the yeshiva, it's true. You're right that the pasuk says Shimer Ba'alma. You're right that the pasuk discusses that they guarded the Bais HaMikdash. Ashkechan, we find the ba'i that you need. We find in the pasuk that they guarded the Bais HaMikdash. Kehanim, Levinim, Shimer. Kehanim and Leviim are guarding. However, what's the problem? Mihu. However, Mas Nisan Katani. What did our Mishnah teach? How many places? In three places the Kehanim guarded the Bais HaMikdash. The Halevim. Now our Mishnah didn't have this line. This line is from the next Mishnah. That the Leviim guarded in how many places? In 21 places. So our Mishnah says that the Kehanim guarded in 3 places. Ve'ilu Bikra. But what did the pasuk say that we just read? Kehanim Uleviim Bahadi Adadi. Where are the Kehanim and Leviim in the pasuk? Aaron was a Kohen. Moshe was a Levi. So the pasuk said Moshe, Aaron, Ubanov. So the pasuk said all of them together. Our Mishnah said, well, how many places did the Kehanim guard? 3. But in the pasuk, what does it seem? The pasuk seems to indicate that 3 of Aaron and Moshe all watch together. So it seems that the Kehanim and Leviim are all mixed together. So how do we learn this? We also, another way of asking the questions, we could say, the Mishnah said there's 3 places for the Kehanim, and the next Mishnah says 21 places for the Leviim. But over here we see Moshe is 1, and Aaron, Ubanav is 4. What's going on? It's not 21, it's not 3, it's 25. What's going on over here? So ask the Gemarah, how could this be our source? So answers the Gemarah, you got to put a comma in the pasuk. So Amri, they answered, Hachi Kamar. This is how you have to learn the pasuk. V'achoinim lefnei HaMishkan, and those who encamped in front of the Mishkan, Kedma to the east, lefnei Oyel Moyed, in front of the Oyel Moyed, Mizracha Moshe. Well, how do you learn the pasuk? That Moshe guarded in front of the Mishkan on the eastern side. Kama, Mizracha Moshe. V'hadar, and then you continue reading the pasuk. Aaron ubanav shomer mishmeres hamikdash. That Aaron and his children guarded the guarding of the mikdash. She'Aaron b'chan makoim. Aaron was in one place. Ubanav b'shnei mikaimais, and his children were in 2 places. So says the Gemarah, we have one pasuk, and it's true that the pasuk seemingly listed them all together. Moshe, Aaron, Ubanav. Says the Gemarah, no, you got to read the pasuk that there's 2 halves of the pasuk. The first part of the pasuk says that Moshe guarded in one area. The pasuk continues that Aaron, Ubanav, guarded in a separate area. So says the Gemarah, Mimai. How do you know that's the right way to read the pasuk? Midichsiv, from the fact that the pasuk says vehachoinim. The pasuk began with the word vehachoinim, they encamped. Uksiv, then the pasuk said shoimrim, they watched. It's 2 different words, showing us that there's 2 halves of this pasuk. Choinim l'cha. The first part of the pasuk is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. He was choinim, he encamped. Then shoimrim l'cha, the second half of the pasuk by Aaron Ubanav is talking about that they guarded. So now we have a source that how many places did you guard the Mishkan? Did you guard the Bais HaMikdash? 3. Where do we see 3 again? Aaron Ubanav, his 2 children, is 3. The pasuk said Moshe, who's a Levi. No, that's a different part of the pasuk. Asks the Gemarah further, 4 lines to the bottom. Ema, maybe we should say, Kulu bechad makom lechudei. How do you know that Aaron, Ubanav, were stationed in 3 different areas? Maybe all of them were standing together, and there was one place that they watched. We said in our Mishnah, B'shloisha mekaimais, in 3 places you guard the Bais HaMikdash, Bais Avtinus, Bais HaNitzus, and Bais HaMoikad. 3 different places, and that's what we're looking for the source from. Says the Gemarah, wait, maybe Aaron and Ubanav, maybe they all stood in one location. Ema kulu b'chan makam l'chudei. Says the Gemarah, Loi salka daitach. Don't say that. Why not? Ma Moshe. Because just like Moshe was one person, and we said you read the pasuk, you split it in half. Chad makam lechudei. Just like Moshe was in one place by himself. Af Aharon Ubanov. So to Aaron and his children were bechad makam lechudei. Each one were in its own place. So Aaron is one person. Shnei banav were 2 people. So Moshe Rabbeinu is in one place in the first half of the pasuk. The second half of the pasuk is Aaron Ubanav, each in their own place, and that is our source. That how many places did you guard the Bais HaMikdash? 3. Answer number 1 of the Gemarah. 2 lines from the bottom. Answer number 2 of the Gemarah. Rav Ashi Amar, says Rav Ashi, Miseifa Dikra. From the end of the pasuk is our source that there were 3 places that you guarded the Bais HaMikdash. What's the source from the end of the pasuk? Says Rav Ashi, Shoimrim Mishmeres Limishmeres. The pasuk said this word shomer, guard, 3 times. Shoimrim mishmeres limishmeres. Because the pasuk used the same word 3 times, what does that teach us? 3 places that you guard the Beis HaMikdash. So, what do we learn so far? We learned that there's 3 places you guard the Beis HaMikdash: Bais HaNitzus, Bais Avtinus, and Bais HaMoikad. What is the source? 2 different potential sources. The first answer of the Gemarah is that it says Aroinu Banov, which are 3 different people in 3 different places. The second answer of Rav Ashi is the fact that the pasuk says Shoimrim mishmeres lemishmeres, that the word shoimer, that the word guarding, is utilized 3 times. We continue with the Gemarah at Chavav Amid Bais. Let's turn over the Gemarah. Bais Avtinus u Bais HaNitzus. The Mishnah listed 3 places. Becoming familiar with these names, the 3 places that you guard the Beis HaMikdash: Bais HaMoikad, Bais Avtinus, Bais HaNitzus. And if you remember, the Mishnah split them into 2. That Bais HaMoikad is one type of area, which is a large room with 1 floor with a dome ceiling. Bais HaNitzus, Bais Avtinus were 2 floors. Asks the Gemarah, Ibayilahu. Asks the Gemarah, Chavav Beis, the top line. Whenever you have a 2-floored structure, there's 2 ways of having a 2-floor structure. Ibayilu. Aliyois mamish have, were they really a 2nd floor? What does it mean, a 2nd floor? That there's a floor underneath it. For example, the lodge, every building that you have a 2nd floor, there's a floor on top and there's a floor on the bottom. It's a real 2nd floor. Or what else might it be? Oidilma, or maybe Davi Givihi Migba Ke'aliyos. It was raised up like a 2nd floor. What does that mean? Like a raised porch. A raised porch, is that a 2nd floor? No. It's elevated. It might be the same height as a 2nd floor. But is it actually a 2nd floor? The answer is no. It's just an elevated structure. So the Gemarah wants to know, with these 2 areas, Bais Avtinus and Bais HaNitzus, were they a 2nd floor, or were they just elevated? So what's really the question? What was underneath them? Was there...
Maybe it's a 1-floor structure, like a basement.
Oh, so that's the question. Meaning, was there something underneath it? We know from the Mishnah that it was high. But now the question is, what's underneath it? That's what we're trying to figure out. It's Bais HaMikdash. We have to know precisely what's going on. So we know that there's someone high up. Was there someone underneath it? That's the question. Answers the Gemarah Tashema. 3 lines down, answers the Gemarah Chavav Beis. Tashema, I'll bring you a proof. Ditinan. We learned in the Mishnah Midos. Midos is the counterpart to Tamid, as Midos details all the areas of the Beis HaMikdash. Ditinan, we learned in the Mishnah Shabbat Safain, in the north of the Beis HaMikdash was the Shar HaNitzus, was the gate of the Nitzos, the Beis HaNitzus. Kimin, and it was built, Kimin, Achsadra. It was built like an Achsadra, like a pavilion is the article word if you want it. The Aliyah, and here's the critical words, Benuya al Gaba, and there was a floor built on top of it. And the Mishnah there explains that what Kohanim, there were Kohanim Shoimrim Mil Mala, there were Kohanim on the top, and it was on the bottom. The Haleviyim Mil Mata, and there were Leviim on the bottom. And there was a door lachol into the area of the Beis HaMikdash called lachol, which is outside of the Hazara. So what do we see? We see there are Kohanim on the top and Leviim on the bottom. So what do we see? What type of 2-floored area was it? A real 2-floored area. Not just like an elevated porch, but rather that there was 2 different floors. Top floor was Kohanim, bottom floor was Leviim. We have 1 more minute. So in 1 more minute, what we're going to do is we're going to begin the next Gemarah. Minahani Mili. Let's just begin. 5 lines down, Minahani Mili, from where do we know? We're looking for the Tanu Rabbanon that we learned in a Braisa. It says the Braisa, V'yilavu alecha v'shar sucha. V'yilavu alecha, they'll accompany you and they'll serve you. Ba'avoidascha hakasav midaber. This is referring to, this is a new piece, so we're not going to start this with this tomorrow. Let's just review. So what do we learn? We learned that there's 3 areas that they guard the Beis HaMikdash. Those 3 areas, the source for those 3 areas is a pasuk that says, Moshe Aaron Ubanav were 3 different people in 3 different areas. Source number 1. Source number 2 is Rav Ashi, Shoimrim, Mishmeres, Lemishmeres. Use the same word three times. And number 2, we know that the Bais Avtinus and the Bais HaNitzus were elevated areas. And what type of elevated areas? We prove from the Gemarah in Mishnah Midais that they were real elevated areas, that they had Kohanim on top, Leviim on bottom, meaning real 2-floored areas that each floor functioned separately. Tomorrow we'll pick it up from the Tanu Rabbanan.